6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud came a voice, "This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. So in the chapter, just before the chapter that in Mark that tells about the transfiguration, we hear about Jesus feeding 4,000 people. Would he have seven loaves of bread, and he fed 4,000 people and took up 7 baskets full of bread afterwards. In the chapter before that, we read about him feeding the 5,000, where he had 12 loaves of bread or something. I don't know. I get my numbers all mixed up. Anyway, there was more left over than they had to begin with. And in between those 2 things, he heals people, he casts out demons, he teaches. And then the Pharisees come to him and say, "Show us a sign so that we can believe in you." And Jesus says, "There will be no sign." and so you listen to that and you say, what does he mean there's not going to be a sign? I mean, we've had all of this stuff going on, these miracles that he's been performing, and not only did he heal people and cast out demons and feed multitudes, but he walked on water and he stilled storms and he changed water into wine. But those were not signs, according to Jesus. But what does Jesus know? Well, everything, I guess. So we have to listen to that and think about what is going on here. If this is not a sign, what is it? So we have that story. We see that Jesus takes Peter and James and John, and they go up on this mountain, which actually is just a hill compared to the mountains we have here. and they get up there, and all of a sudden, Jesus is glowing. He's like whiter than white. And he's talking to Moses and Elijah, 2 of the greats that we know from the Old Testament. Moses, who led the people out of the Exodus, who gave them the commandments from God. Moses, who is called the prophet. So if you're reading the Bible and it says the prophet, instead of naming the prophet, they're talking about Moses. He was the greatest prophet of all. And Elijah, who was also a great prophet, probably second only to Moses, and because he healed people, he raised the dead, he did all sorts of things, and he taught. So here's Peter and James and John, and Peter, being Peter, who always has to do or say something, says, "I'll build 3 tabernacles and you can live in them." And I know it doesn't say tabernacles, it's just something else. But the word is tabernacles, and the interesting thing is, people are living in houses now. They're not living in tents anymore, except for the shepherds who still live in tents. But tabernacle and tent are the same word, but it makes you think of that tabernacle in the Old Testament, where it had the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle before they built the temple, and there God dwelt. And that tabernacle they would take down, and it moved with them. They would put it back up wherever they camped. And so you think about what Peter is saying. He's wanting to build tabernacles for the 3 of them to live in, which says it was a holy place. And Peter is recognizing this is a holy event. These are holy people. This is holy time. And then all of a sudden the fog rolls in, the cloud comes down, and they can't see Jesus and Moses and Elijah anymore, but they hear this voice coming out of the cloud. It says, "This is my son, my beloved. Listen to him." And then the cloud is gone. The fog is gone. And there's Jesus. He's not lit up anymore. Moses and Elijah are gone, and there he is. But it's not a sign. Don't think about it being a sign. So if it's not a sign, what is it? Well, I remember back in seminary that one of my professors talked about windows. And he talked about the miracles as being windows through which we look to see a little bit of what God is like. It's that reality that exists beyond our reality that at this point in time we can't comprehend. It is greater than us. It is greater than anything that we have ever encountered. And so Peter and James and John were privileged to look through that window and see that Jesus was more than just a man, that he was more than one of us. There was something greater here. And yet he was one of us. It was a window. And so we look through that and we think, what are we supposed to learn from this? Well, a lot of people would say it's just fairy tales. And I think that's more prevalent now than ever. When I was in seminary, I went to a bookstore and I found this book of fairy tales, and it had Bible stories in it. And so I bought it because I wanted to show that some people see these as simply fairy tales, that they're not real, that didn't really happen. They're just like Cinderella and Snow White and all the rest. But to us, they're real. To us, these stories are true. And so we have to think about that God is calling us because we are his holy people. Did you know you were holy? Even Randy is holy. We are all God's holy people. And so what we get here is a glimpse of what lies ahead for us. It's a glimpse of who Jesus is. That he's more than just a man. He is a man, and he lived among us as a human being, and yet he's more than that. We get a glimpse of what Jesus really is, a glimpse of what lies ahead for us. And I think that's worth thinking about, because you are all holy people. Do you know that? That you are holy? Because Jesus' holiness is yours. And if you read the epistles, you find a place where it says that we are clothed in the righteousness of Christ. That's why we put a pall over the coffin, to remind ourselves that this person who died was clothed with the righteousness of Christ and therefore is seen as a righteous person. And because of Jesus, because of this one that Peter and James and John saw in that transfiguration, because of him, we are righteous. And so we are people who are called to live out that righteousness. And we don't do it perfectly. We all make mistakes. We all do things that are wrong, myself included. Although I've been told I'm not supposed to sin because I'm a pastor, that doesn't work. I'm still a human being. And so we try to live out that righteousness of Christ. That is our calling, and that is what we try to do. And we're capable of so much more than we ever think that we're capable of doing. There's a saying, and I have my papers here because there's a saying of Christopher Robin to Winnie the Pooh that is very popular now. It's on plaques, except they don't put the whole thing on. That says, "You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think." And that's where most of the plaques stop. But the next sentence is, "But the most important thing is, even if we're apart, I'll always be with you." We are greater than we think. It frightens us. We like to play it down. But the one who is always with us, even when we're apart, is Jesus. He's always there. for us to lean on, for us to call strength from. He didn't just show up in the Transfiguration for who he was, but he shows up now in our lives.